My sister called me a bloated suburban mom, then posted my baby's photos to impress her rich fiancé, so I ruined her engagement with one dinner. I'm a 27-year-old female who has never had a good connection with my elder sister Lena, 32 female. But things got worse after I revealed my pregnancy last year. For background, I've been with my spouse Ethan, 29, male, for 8 years, married for 3, and we both have steady employment in finance and healthcare, respectively. We had always expected to start a family around this time, and when we found out I was pregnant, we were overjoyed. However, Lena had a different perspective on the subject. She has always prided herself on being the family's free spirit, traveling extensively and changing occupations every few years, which is very okay. Everyone deserves to live life on their own terms. But when she found out about my pregnancy, she turned it into a crusade against my life decisions. It began with subtle comments about how I was wasting my youth and settling for mediocrity. She kept reminding me that I was only 27 and had my entire life ahead of me. These comments progressed into outright condemnation of every element of my pregnancy. I never expected her to understand or agree with my views, but expressing outright hatred for my every move was simply needless. She used to make snarky remarks about my weight gain, saying things like, "I guess you're just giving up on your appearance altogether, and you know some women actually maintain their figures during pregnancy." At first I dismissed it as Lena being Lena, but the longer I tried to ignore it, the worse it became. She'd give me articles about women who had lost their identities after becoming mothers, or memes about giving up on life after having children. It wasn't simply fat-shaming anymore. It was as if she was actively trying to make me regret my decision to have children. I also discovered that she was speaking about me to mutual acquaintances, saying things like, "She's wasting her potential," or "I just don't get why anyone would choose to ruin their life like that." It ached because these were people I cared about, and her remarks had instilled doubt in their minds. One acquaintance even wondered if I was truly prepared for the huge responsibility of parenting, which felt like a strike to the gut. The breaking point occurred during my baby shower. My mother and best friend had planned a lovely celebration, and everything was going well until Lena arrived 3 hours later, plainly tipsy. She spent the entire event making loud comments about how I looked like I was about to explode, despite the fact that I was only 6 months pregnant. She commented on how bloated my face had become and how she couldn't believe I would choose diapers over fantasies. I ended up crying in the bathroom while my mother attempted to console me. Ethan was furious and ordered her to leave, which she did while passionately screaming that we were all overly sensitive. My other friends were horrified by her behavior, but Lena dismissed it. For weeks afterward, she would bring up the incident, giggling about how everyone should relax and blaming me for being excessively emotional due to my pregnancy. However, it wasn't simply the baby shower. There were other little occurrences that I didn't want to address at the time since I was too fatigued to deal with them. Lena once asked me to a yoga class, stating it was her way of keeping me in shape, but when I arrived, she spent the entire time making passive-aggressive remarks about how much more difficult it was for me than it used to be. I left in tears, feeling as if I could never live up to her ridiculous expectations of who I should be. She'd also casually dropped by my house with her friends, treating me like a spectacle and pointing out how much my life was about to change, and how she couldn't imagine being so tied down. These visits were not about bonding or support. They were an opportunity for her to showcase her carefree life in front of me. Fast forward to last month, Lena had become engaged to Daniel, 34, male, a wealthy businessman from a family-oriented household. I'd heard bits and pieces about him from my parents, about how he came from a wealthy family, was well known in his field, and appeared to be the ideal match for Lena, at least on paper. The engagement was unexpected, but not wholly surprising considering Lena's inclination to rush headfirst into new relationships and situations with little foresight. But this time there was a noticeable change in her conduct that I could not ignore. Almost overnight, my sister changed entirely. After months of radio silence, no calls, texts, or concerns about me or my daughter, she began reaching out on a regular basis. It started with casual texts about how the baby was doing, followed by offers to drop off gifts. She even bought pricey baby clothes and toys that Ethan and I had never asked for or required. At first I tried to convince myself that she was attempting to make things right, but the more I thought about it, the more it seemed like her newfound enthusiasm was staged, rather than genuine. The final straw came when I realized that Lena had been sharing photos of my daughter on social media, which she had shot during one of her drop-in visits. I hadn't granted her permission to share those images, and I hadn't been asked about them. She labeled photos with words like, "the world's proudest aunt," and "look at my beautiful niece," painting a picture of a devoted, committed family member. It was frustrating because I knew the truth. This was not about my daughter or her alleged love of family. It was about Lena attempting to create a narrative, particularly in front of Daniel, that did not reflect the truth of who she was or how she treated me throughout my pregnancy. Then, Lena invited us to dinner. It was presented as a casual family meeting, but it was evident that the main goal was for us to properly meet Daniel. My parents were already taken with him, and they urged that it would be a fantastic occasion for everyone to get together. Ethan and I agreed to go, partially out of obligation and partly out of curiosity about how Lena would behave in front of Daniel and the rest of the family. The evening began uneventfully. Lena was in full hostess mode, ensuring that everything was great. She presented Daniel to Ethan and me with an over-the-top warmth that felt contrived, as if she was playing a character she hadn't yet mastered. To his credit, Daniel was polite and appeared to be genuinely kind, yet the entire evening felt stiff. I could sense the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. As we sat down for dinner, the conversation turned to family, children, and future plans. Lena leaned into the story she'd carefully created over the previous few weeks, gushing about how much she enjoyed spending time with my daughter and how thrilled she was to be an aunt. Daniel, apparently impressed by this alleged side of Lena, weighed in, saying how wonderful it was that Lena was so close to her niece. He was talking about the following. "One of the things I love most about Lena is how she's always been so family-oriented, especially with her niece. Her love for children is something that really stood out to me." I couldn't hold back any longer. I glanced at Daniel and, as calmly as I could, gave him the truth. I told him how Lena had treated me throughout my pregnancy, how she had body-shamed me, dismissed my decisions, and turned my baby shower, one of the most significant days of my life, into a living nightmare. I told him how she had insulted my plan to become a boring suburban mom, and how she had sent me horrible texts about sacrificing my life for a baby. The room became strained. Lena's face had lost its color, and for the first time that evening she was silent. Daniel was stunned, gazing between Lena and me as he processed all I had said. He requested to view the texts, and I handed him my phone without hesitation, reading through the months of messages documenting Lena's unwavering cruelty. As he went through them, his expression changed from astonishment to incredulity to wrath. Lena murmured something about being misunderstood and not meaning anything by her statements, but it was too late. The proof was right there in black and white. Daniel was confused about what to say or do. He stood up quickly, excused himself from the table, and left the restaurant. The rest of us sat there in startled silence, watching him leave. Lena was in complete terror and followed him out, but not before turning to me and snarling, "You've ruined everything." That was 4 weeks ago, and what happened next was utterly unexpected. Lena had not talked to me since supper. No calls, no texts, just radio silence. I assumed she was ignoring me, but then she called unexpectedly. Her voice was unsteady, and for the first time in years, she appeared vulnerable. She informed me that Daniel had called off their engagement. He couldn't reconcile the person she had shown him with the horrors I had told him about her mistreatment of me. But now I have no idea what to do. Lena hasn't contacted me since that night, and frankly, I'm not sure I want her to. My parents' silence hasn't helped either. They've decided to remain entirely neutral, offering no opinions or support, as if they're waiting for the dust to settle and me to move on. I get the impression they're more concerned with maintaining the peace than with understanding how badly I was affected by Lena's conduct during my pregnancy, and now, it's irritating because despite everything I still feel guilty. I'm wondering if I went too far by confronting her in front of Daniel. I worry if I'm to blame for her engagement breaking apart. But then I remember the months of hurtful comments, the passive-aggressive jabs, and the fact that she had the guts to appear as if she cared simply to please someone else. And I can't shake the notion that no matter how much my family tries to downplay it, what Lena did was incorrect. So, am I to blame for exposing her, or am I finally standing up for myself, as I should have done a long time ago? I wish I could claim I know the solution, but I'm still trying to figure it out, and I could really use some help. Update 1. It's been a few days since everything went down, and nothing much has changed. If anything, the stillness has been louder. My parents haven't mentioned anything to me about the problem. They haven't even addressed what happened at the restaurant that night, and it's becoming increasingly evident that they just want this to be finished. I expected them to at least provide some support or inquire how I was doing after everything, but they didn't. It's as if they're choosing to ignore what happened, believing that if we all stay silent for long enough, everything will be fine. But what's really getting to me are the texts I've been receiving from mutual friends and relatives, all of which essentially say the same thing, that I should contact Daniel and make things right. Clearly, this is all about Lena's future now. They are more concerned about her relationship with Daniel than about the agony she caused me, as if her engagement somehow validates all she did. It is irritating. Everyone keeps saying it's my obligation to fix this, as if I'm the one who ruined her relationship and should be the one to repair it. Never mind that Lena spent months emotionally ripping me down at one of my most vulnerable points in life. No, evidently the fact that I stuck up for myself and revealed the truth is destroying her life. One relative had the gall to propose that I apologize to Lena because it was the adult thing to do. I couldn't believe what I heard. What do you apologize for? For telling Daniel the truth? For revealing how Lena treated me, something no one else appears to care about? The hypocrisy is staggering. I made it abundantly plain to them and anyone else who inquired that I do not believe in retribution or holding grudges for the sake of it. But this is not about vengeance. It's about how Lena emotionally wounded me when I was already struggling. She turned what should have been a joyful and beautiful moment, the delivery of my first child, into a horror. How am I expected to forgive this? What if I lost the baby as a result of the stress she caused me? Throughout my pregnancy, I was depressed and apprehensive, constantly thinking about her next harsh remark or how she would twist the knife even further. I can't count how many sleepless nights I spent crying, wondering whether I was doing something wrong by simply trying to enjoy this new chapter of my life. She robbed me of moments I'll never get back, and now everyone expects me to ignore it because it could influence her future. I also had a talk with my folks the other day, and while calling it a conversation sounds generous, it was essentially pointless. I had thought they would view things from my perspective and at least acknowledge how severely I was hurt. Instead, they attempted to resume neutral play. It was the same old song and dance, with them sitting on the fence and acting as if this were some minor sibling squabble. I could see, though, by their tone and the way they avoided the matter, that they wanted me to be the bigger person. They want me to forgive Lena, forget what she did, and move on, because it is the correct thing to do in their view. But I can't. I will not. I don't think they realize how much this has affected me. Perhaps they do, and they just don't care. In any case, it was evident that I was unlikely to receive any genuine help from them. My mother kept repeating things like, "Family is family, and you two have always had your differences, but you're sisters, and sisters forgive each other." My father merely nodded along, without saying anything. Everything felt as if they were attempting to brush everything under the carpet, as if this was simply another of Lena's minor outbursts that I should ignore for the sake of harmony. However, this is not about peace for me, it's about respect. It's about creating boundaries and refusing to let anyone, including relatives, walk all over me simply because we share blood. I will not allow anyone to make me feel guilty for safeguarding my mental health and standing up for what is right. Everyone can tell me to forgive and forget, but I can't do it right now. And frankly, I don't believe I should have to. I haven't heard a word from Lena. Part of me wonders if she's waiting for me to crawl back and make the first move, as I've done so many times before. However, this time is different. This time, I won't be the one to bridge the gap. If she wants to chat or mend something, she'll have to come to me. Even then, I'm not sure I'm ready to welcome her back into my life after everything she's done. So here I am, stranded in this limbo where everyone believes I am the villain of the story, the one who ruined everything. But I know the truth. That's enough for now. Update 2. Some things have transpired since my last post, and I'm still trying to get my head around it all. I never anticipated all of this to turn out the way it has. But here we are. After weeks of silence from Lena and nothing from my parents save their customary neutrality, something unexpected happened. Daniel reached out to me. It was entirely unexpected. Ethan and I were out for lunch one afternoon when we ran into him. I could tell he had seen us first because he hesitated before approaching, but he eventually did. I braced myself for an unpleasant encounter, but he was surprisingly calm and even warm. He asked if we could talk for a while, so we exited the cafe, leaving Ethan to finish up inside. Daniel was cordial but forthright, and he made it clear from the start that he didn't blame me or Ethan for what transpired that evening. He said I should be at peace because it wasn't our fault. That was a relief to hear since, while I knew I had done the right thing by exposing Lena's actions, there was still a part of me that felt bad. Maybe it was because everyone else seemed to think I ruined her future. But hearing it from Daniel, who was actually involved, helped to lift the weight off my shoulders. He told me he appreciated my candor that night and that I had not ruined things, as Lena had said. Then he began to open up about his own issues. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who observed Lena's harsh, judgmental personality. Daniel had noticed flaws in their relationship for several months, and my confrontation pushed everything to the surface. He stated that Lena's actions toward me had astonished him. More importantly, he had begun to see that her criticism had spread to other aspects of their relationship. He stated how Lena had grown increasingly fascinated with status and material possessions, more concerned with how much money he earned than with their genuine relationship. She would make causal statements about his employment and the types of people he should network with, gently attempting to mold his life to fit whatever image she had in mind. Daniel wasn't naive. He understood that relationships required some level of compromise and influence, but as he paid closer attention, he saw Lena wasn't conceding. She was attempting to control. She had even started criticizing him in front of their friends under the pretext of friendly teasing, but it was usually about his appearance or things he did wrong in her opinion. He stated that he began to feel as if he was being shaped into someone else, someone worth Lena's time and attention, and it wasn't just their engagement that was unraveling. Her professional life was also disintegrating. Lena had lately been laid off from her most recent job, another of her adventures, as my parents refer to them. Lena had always been a career nomad, jumping from one promising job to the next, but this time was different. She had not chosen to go. She had been dismissed. Daniel didn't go into detail, but he implied that her attitude and unwillingness to work well with others had played a significant role. This all happened around the same time that their relationship began to unravel, adding to their stress. With her engagement in risk and her career in disarray, Lena contacted me. She hadn't spoken to me since the night at the restaurant, but she was now sending me texts. The tone was radically different than previously. There were no sarcastic remarks or passive-aggressive insults. Instead, she sounded fragile and desperate. She was asking for help, stating she was lost and needed her sister. It was startling to read since it was such a departure from the Lena I'd grown to anticipate, the one who had spent months making me feel worthless. A part of me wanted to feel awful for her. Lena had always been our family's golden child, the one who could never do anything wrong in the eyes of our parents. Growing up, it seemed like she could make any mistake and yet land on her feet, but I was constantly trying to keep up. And now, everything she had built, or rather meticulously nurtured to appear flawless from the outside, was crumbling around her. I could see how this was affecting her and how desperate she must be to salvage something from the rubble. But then I remembered all of the horrible things she'd said and done. I recall sitting in the toilet at my baby shower, sobbing as my friends and family tried to console me because Lena had turned what should have been a happy occasion into yet another opportunity to bring me down. I remembered the texts in which she referred to me as a boring suburban mom and insulted my decision to have a family, as well as how she made me feel like I was wasting my life by choosing happiness over her definition of success. I recalled everything. And with that, any sympathy I could have had for her began to disappear. I'm not ready to forgive her. Not now. Maybe never. Even if she is going through a difficult period, it does not erase the months of emotional pain she caused on me. I've been thinking a lot about what it means to forgive someone. And I've learned that forgiveness cannot be forced simply because someone else is struggling. Forgiveness, if it ever comes, must be real. And I am currently nowhere near that point. As expected, my parents remain undecided. When Lena approached them to share her side of the tale, they did not take a firm stance. They are sympathetic to her position, of course, but they continue to handle it as if it were a petty disagreement between brothers. They keep asking if I've spoken with her yet, and if I'm willing to sit down and sort things out. I know they expect me to be the one to solve things, but this time, I refuse to make the first move. I'm tired of being the one who bends and is expected to smooth things out. For the time being, I'm trying to focus on my own family and the life Ethan and I are creating together. I don't have the energy to deal with Lena's mess, and I feel no duty to clean it up. If she wants to fix things, she'll have to find it out for herself. I've spent far too much time prioritizing her needs over my own, and I'm not willing to do so longer. Update 3. Hello everyone. After speaking with Daniel, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. It felt like a weight had been lifted from my chest. For so long, I'd been carrying around this guilt, as if I was somehow responsible for what had happened between Lena and Daniel, for the demise of her idyllic existence. However, having Daniel tell me clearly that it was not my responsibility that Lena had done this to herself brought me a sense of relief. It confirmed all I had felt all along. For the first time, I realized that the guilt I'd been feeling from my parents, friends, and relatives' urge to mend things was unfounded. It was not my obligation to fix what Lena had shattered. With this newfound clarity, I was determined to confront Lena once and for all. I couldn't keep letting this go, and I wasn't going to let anyone bully me into forgiving her or making things right for her sake. So I contacted her and informed her that I wanted to meet in person, not to reconcile, but to put a stop to the situation once and for all. I needed her to know where I stood, and I wanted her to hear it straight from me. When I arrived at Lena's house, she appeared untidy, distressed, and, for the first time in a long time, vulnerable. But I knew better than to fall for her charade. I'd seen this side of Lena before, the one who would burst into tears when things didn't go her way. This was the same individual who had spent months dismissing my life choices and made me feel like a failure for deciding to have a family. She might appear broken now, but I wasn't going to let that erase the reality of her actions. I got right to the point. I told her I was not going to accept any of the guilt for what had transpired. This mess was hers and hers only. She needed to take responsibility for her actions and quit playing the victim. I made it plain that I was not to blame for her engagement breaking apart or her life disintegrating. Her own actions had created all of this. I could see the astonishment on her face as I talked, but I was not there to cushion the blow. I'd been soft for far too long. I also informed her that if she wanted to make amends with Daniel, she needed to apologize properly this time. For a brief moment, I felt myself falling into a more commanding tone, almost as if I were directing her on what to do. However, it was not about controlling her. It was about providing her the opportunity to repair what little she had left. It was up to her to take that advice, but at least I had spoken up. Then came the hardest part. I told her I didn't want her to be in my daughter's life for a while. I needed to see actual change from her before I considered inviting her back in. I couldn't let her be near my child knowing she was still the person who had caused me so much anguish. I needed her to show that she was truly sorry and willing to change, not only for Daniel or for herself, but because she had damaged those closest to her. Until then, I had told her it was not worth it. After that, I had another conversation with my folks. I'd waited long enough, and it was time they knew the truth as well. I told them how disgusted I was with them for refusing to take a side when it was obvious who was wrong. This wasn't some minor sibling squabble. This was a significant fight that had left me profoundly hurt. Their neutrality had just exacerbated the situation, so I made it clear that I needed their support this time. If they couldn't, I asked them to maintain their distance as well. It wasn't easy telling them that, but it had to be spoken. So, here we are. Things are still a little sloppy, but I no longer bear the guilt that was dragging me down. I'm not saying everything is settled or that I have all the answers, but I do feel like I have control over my own story. I'm setting limits that I should have set a long time ago, and I'm finally prioritizing my own health and that of my family.